Why, he's mad. Look at his eyes.
In 1931, the film Dracula took the world by storm. Besides making star Bela Lugosi a household name, it helped co-star Dwight Frye, who portrayed the insect-chomping lunatic Renfield, achieve a degree of macabre celluloid immortality cherished to this day by his cult following. However, Dwight Frye wasn't the only actor considered for the role of Renfield, and he wasn't the one Lugosi wanted to have the part. Bernard Jukes, who originated the role of Renfield on a British stage, would perform the part well over 2,000 times, and despite lobbying hard to get the film role, he would be left by the wayside, becoming merely a footnote in the Dracula saga. Bernard Jukes was born in Gravesend, Kent, England on April 23, 1899. Bernard was the younger of two children, having an older brother named Clifford, who was born in 1897. Although he would become known professionally as Bernard Jukes, his full name was Bernard St. George Starr Jukes. According to England's 1901 census, Bernard, his brother Clifford, and their mother were living with Bernard's maternal great-grandmother Emily Stacy in the township of Milton in Kent. Bernard's mother was listed as married, but his father was not living with them, and his mother was employed as a shorthand typist. By the time of the 1911 census, Bernard's mother had remarried to Ellis George Gregory, who worked as an insurance inspector. Although Clifford was living with them and attending school, Bernard had been sent to a convent school in the township of Bridport in Dorset, England. He was then sent to the Anglican Preparatory Military Academy at Wimbledon, now known as Wimbledon College. According to a 1928 article, Jukes' parents wanted him to pursue a career in either the ministry or the military, but he fell in love with the theater while still in school, and upon graduation, he joined the repertory company of Sir Frank Benson, a respected actor and manager noted for his productions of Shakespeare's plays. While working with Benson, Jukes met Oscar Ashe, an Australian actor, playwright, and lyricist, who was so impressed with Jukes' abilities that he signed the young actor to appear in a play he had written called Chu Chin Chow. It was an unprecedented hit, enjoying a 5-year run from August 1916 to July 1921 with over 2,200 performances. Jukes, however, was not with the production for its entire run. There was, after all, a war on, and Jukes soon found himself in the British Army as a member of the Gordon Highlanders. In the summer of 1918, at the Second Battle of the Marne, which was the last major German offensive on the Western Front during the First World War, Jukes was part of an outfit that comprised 913 men. When the fighting was over, he was one of 128 survivors. He was awarded the Croix de Guerre for his, quote, bravery and presence of mind, unquote. Upon his release from the Army, Jukes returned to the stage. He promptly found work, appearing in such productions as The Skin Game and Spring Cleaning, both under the direction of Basil Dean. He also found romance when he met actress Elsie Wagstaff. They wed in early 1924. Also in 1924, writer, actor, director, and producer Hamilton Dean adapted Bram Stoker's novel Dracula for the stage. Dean's play premiered at the Grand Theatre in Derby, England on May 15th of the same year, playing for 3 nights only. Dean himself played Van Helsing, with Edmund Blake, the stage name of Frederick Alkin, taking the title role. Some sources report that the role of R.M. Renfield was originally played by G. Malcolm Russell, but following this 3-day engagement, the part went to Bernard Jukes. Other sources report that Jukes originated the role at the play's debut. Regardless, Jukes' name would become synonymous with Renfield's over the next 3 years, while the play toured the United Kingdom. In 1927, the play was performed at London's Little Theatre, where it was seen by Horace Liveright, an American producer who immediately wanted to take the production across the pond. After a deal was made to have Dracula taken to Broadway in New York City, Liveright insisted that both Raymond Huntley, who was portraying Dracula, and Jukes continue in their respective roles. Jukes readily agreed. Huntley, however, couldn't make the trek due to contractual obligations with Dean. This opened the door for another actor to take the part. That actor was Bela Lugosi. Jukes set sail from Southampton aboard the SS Aquitania on August 13, 1927, and arrived at the port of New York 6 days later. Liveright had recruited playwright John L. Balderston to revamp Dean's stage play, and the cast soon commenced with rehearsals of the revised work. Liveright's production of Dracula debuted on September 22, 1927, for a 3-night engagement at Parsons Theater in Hartford, Connecticut. They then provided 2 performances at the Lyceum Theater in New London, Connecticut. Following these warm-up performances, the play opened on Broadway at the Fulton Theater on October 5th, and it ran until May of the following year, clocking in 261 performances. Following this success, Dracula hit the road, touring the country with a variety of actors through the end of 1929. Jukes always received solid reviews for his portrayal of the Renfield character. Theater critic Harvey Gall of the Pittsburgh Press stated, quote, "Bernard Jukes, who presents the lunatic, does lunacy better than many men do sanity. He gives you the heebie-jeebies when he begins to eat spiders and enjoy them," unquote. Edward Harold Crosby of the Boston Post credited Jukes with a deft portrayal of Renfield, noting that when the character of Dracula, quote, "was not frightening the household, this crazy man got in his work, and believe me, it was some scary," unquote. And Catherine Lyons of the Boston Traveler wrote that Jukes provided, quote, 50% of the atmosphere with his howls and grimaces, unquote. It wasn't surprising that many critics singled Jukes out for his convincing portrayal. Decades before method acting became the standard, Jukes would make a careful study of each and every role he did. To prepare for the part of Renfield, he spent a month visiting various lunatic asylums throughout England, making a study of the facial expressions and physical movements of his various subjects. Purportedly, while performing the part on Broadway, Jukes received praise from a mental health specialist who congratulated him on, quote, "a perfect characterization of an insane person," unquote. During the spring of 1930, Jukes was cast in the role of Bells, basically a butler to Jack Oakey, in The Sap from Syracuse, which was filmed at Paramount Studios in New York. Although receiving a fair amount of screen time, it was a thankless role in a mediocre movie, and it did nothing to further his career.
Captain's compliments, sir, and dinner is at 7 o'clock.
Oh boy, and ain't I hungry. Well, let's get going, son.
You mean you're ready now, sir?
I'm always ready to eat.
But this is the second night out, sir.
Okay, 1, 2. Yeah, that's right.
Well, aren't you going to dress, sir?
Well, what's the matter, Mike? Oh, something missing here?
Oh, no, sir, everything's all right. Only people generally wear dinner clothes at dinner.
No.
Surely, sir.
Say, son, you better stick with me. You know, I need you in my life.
Also in 1930, Universal Studios secured the film rights to Dracula. Todd Browning was the director and Carl Laemmle Jr. the producer. Both Edward Van Sloan and Herbert Bunston, who had portrayed the roles of Van Helsing and Dr. Seward on stage, respectively, were quickly signed to repeat their roles for the film version. However, Bela Lugosi, who had received rave reviews for his stage portrayal, barely won the leading role. Purportedly, Lon Chaney was the actor Browning and Laemmle had wanted for the role of Dracula, but following his sudden death in August 1930 at the age of 47, they had to scramble to find someone for the part before production commenced in late September. Several actors were considered, But when Lugosi agreed to do the part for the paltry sum of $500 per week, totaling $3,500 for the 7-week shoot, he was granted the role. Bernard Jukes, who at this point had easily played the role of Renfield over 2,000 times, felt he was the most qualified actor to assume the role on film. He lobbied hard to get the part, going so far as to have some professional photographs taken that presented Renfield in a more extreme light than he had played him on stage. Unfortunately, Browning and Lemmel weren't convinced. Lugosi put in a good word for Jukes, but since he had barely landed the role of Dracula, his endorsement didn't hold any weight. Eventually, the role of Renfield went to Dwight Frye. Although a virtual unknown in the film world, Frye had been a leading man on Broadway during the 1920s. Though not a star, he was a well-respected dramatic actor with decent range and ability. When the film was released on Valentine's Day in 1931, it became an immediate critical and financial hit, making the names of both Bela Lugosi and Dwight Frye synonymous with their roles. Following this disappointment, Jukes remained in the States for an additional 3 years, appearing in several plays, both off and on Broadway. None of them even came close to duplicating the success of Dracula, usually having runs from 2 weeks to 2 months. After a supporting role in the play Yellow Jack in early 1934, Jukes finally returned home to England. He worked in theater and radio through the end of 1939, a year he also made his second and final film appearance in Traitor Spy, also known as the Torso Murder Mystery. From March to May of 1939, Jukes returned to his most famous role, playing Renfield in a version of Dracula he also produced. Hamilton Dean, who authored the original stage play, appeared in the title role. The play opened at the Winter Garden on March 20th, then transferred to the Lyceum, where it ran from April 25th through May 13th, logging a total of 49 performances. It would, in many respects, be Jukes' swan song. Just after Christmas, 1939, while visiting his wife in Leicestershire, he took ill with a, quote, gastric complaint, unquote, and died 2 days later, on December 29th. He was buried in Wimbledon early in January. Having no children, his wife, Elsie Wagstaff, was the sole beneficiary of his estate, valued at £271 and 2 shillings. When he died, British newspapers noted that Jukes was best known for having played Renfield on stage, and some sources claimed he performed the part almost 4,000 times. Realistically, though, it was probably somewhere in the vicinity of 2,200 times. Still a very impressive feat. Since memories fade and celluloid endures, Bernard Jukes slipped into obscurity, and Dwight Frye became forever linked to the role of Renfield, being typecast in a sea of lunatics, losers, and derelicts. However, in an interesting aside, the photographs Jukes made while he was lobbying to land the role of Renfield for the film version of Dracula were, for many years, mistakenly credited as being of Dwight Frye. The July 1962 issue of Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine featured a cover illustration by Basil Gogos of Dwight Frye as Renfield, but in fact it was actually Jukes adorning the cover. Although some may view it as merely a professional faux pas, others may see it as a more prophetic occurrence, which once again placed Bernard Jukes in Dwight Frye's shadow, a place where he will more than likely remain. In a way, casting Dwight Frye as Renfield destroyed 2 careers. Whereas Bernard Jukes embraced the role of Renfield and would have loved to have been remembered for having played the part on film, Dwight Frye was cursed by it. Frye, after all, was a leading man on Broadway prior to his arrival in Hollywood, and his film career never truly reflected his thespian abilities. Jukes, on the other hand, was a character actor known for his supporting roles, and the biggest supporting role of his entire career was that of R.M. Renfield. What became a curse for Dwight Frye, evolving into a bizarre form of immortality, would have been seen as a blessing to Bernard Jukes, the man who brought the character of R.M. Renfield to life on a British stage almost a century ago.